Daniel, I'm going to start with you first. Without giving any spoilers, when Citizen Wiener made its world premiere at Slamdance, audiences had a little knowledge about the twist that gets revealed at the end. How- You've since now gone back and re-edited the film, building more context clues leading up to that moment. How soon after the festival did you realize you wanted to rework those elements, and how involved were Joe and Zach in that process, given that this is their brainchild?
Yeah, we're pretty much all equally involved in terms of the edit. We all have, give notes and whatever the best idea is rises to the top. After Slam Dance, there were some minor edits, but the main one was how we do the reveal at the end. Because, when you're used to it and you expect it, you think you could just show the information and that'll be enough. But it's such a seesaw of emotion to accept that we realized we needed more ramp up to that reveal in order for it to click with people. Because a lot of people in the screening, some people got it immediately, some were whispering with their neighbors and didn't get it, some didn't get it until the Q&A, and then some even walked out thinking the whole thing was a documentary. Um, so it's been a wide range, but I think now finally, with this team, the help of Zach's mom, we found the right balance.
Zach's mom is the star of this film. And, Zach and Joe, you've described Citizen Wiener as a reality movie, blending elements where you relied on the ensemble to drive the story forward while also interacting with people on the streets and on those Zoom calls who had no idea that you were making a film. Can you talk a little bit about how you found that intersection between reality and storytelling while also being really intentional, ensuring that the joke was never played on the community and how you towed that line?
Joe, do you want to respond to that? Because you were really he was the campaign manager. He was the spearheaded the mechanics of all the interactions.
Well, I think, it came from a place of being actually frustrated with politics, the whole movie. So that was just a real world problem that we were observing. And we just thought it would be fun. It would be best to handle it with levity. Um, I don't know in terms, I mean, so I guess what it was is we earnestly spoke about ideas in the neighborhood. We earnestly had conversations with people in the neighborhood. So we always respected that role of a public servant, what they were offering to the public. But at the same time, we're kind of colorful characters and we're surrounded by lots of colorful characters. You mentioned Zach's mom, obviously, and then, the whole ensemble, everybody brought a different kind of personality than maybe you typically see on a political campaign. So I think that it just was like the right mix of people, and then that kind of like slightly off kilter idea to really do it that kind of created some sort of like magical combustion that hopefully you and other people like.
And we had some real ideas. We thought there was
Yeah.
we did not expect to win. We
Right.
thought maybe by some miracle we could.
Well,
And
we thought maybe we could impact the policy of the, like, when Zach would go and debate the other candidates, that he was part of he's in the arena at that point. So at that point, when he says something and suggests something, it does have to be taken somewhat seriously. And you know, yeah, there was a lot of issues that, we earnestly had ideas like I know Zach wants to talk about the startup retail. We want to start talking about that, right? Big win recently, Mayor Adams, he changed zoning that actually really supports that idea.
yeah, that was our big idea, filling stores.
It could have been you guys that influenced that policy.
Probably we were the key deciding factor in that to change everyone's
Likely.
mind all the way to the very top. And in terms of making sure the joke was on us and not making it into something that was a prank on people we were interacting with, I think especially in the Upper West Side, people are naturally skeptical of politicians, and I think a lot of the humor came out of watching them trying to size us up. So it wasn't really like we were trying to trick them in any way, the average voter. We were we were openly campaigning in a very bizarre fashion. So that was kind of the dynamic that we thought was the funniest, was seeing people taken aback a little bit by kind of a circus like, which is that was part of the point too, is that almost all of the candidates were doing that to some extent. We're performing to some extent and trying to kind of provide a sort of entertainment and meet the voters where they wanted them to, meet them where they wanted. So yeah, we just were a little bit more cartoonish in our approach.
Zach, one of the purposes of the film, well, your initial idea was to see a politician who benefits from a scandal. While you didn't win the election, you did get more votes after that was revealed. What does that say about us as a society, or is it just Joe's really great campaign management?
Joe is an excellent campaign manager, and I think if he wanted, he could definitely be very successful in straight comedy. I'm sorry, comedy and politics outside off camera. But that being said, I don't think we would have gotten close to as many votes as we did. And I will say that if Gail Brewer was not in the race, I think there would have been a better chance because we had the endorsement of the more conservative faction and a lot of the people on the left, including a campaign manager for one of the top candidates, was openly talking about how she supported us and liked us a lot as a number two. So we kind of straddled the line. But there's some element of no, there's no such thing as bad press. All PR is good PR. Then I also think the way we embraced what happened and the way we talked about it and refusing to be ashamed, I think that resonated a lot with voters, where you see people that handle a scandal by apologizing. The moment you apologize, you really lost. That's it. It's over. You've done something bad in their eyes. You're perceived as weak. And if you're not ashamed, then it's a lot more fun. And I think it's that's something you want in politics. And as your champion is someone who can't be brought down so easily.
It also helped that you didn't really have anything to apologize for, like in that case.
That too, yeah. That it wasn't.
Yeah,
I didn't do anything
yeah.
wrong. It was just very embarrassing.
This Friday night is actually the Jewish Day of Atonement, and Zach famously is the only Jew I know that doesn't atone.
Don't say that. It makes you sound horrible. I don't.
It's the new policy ever since he became a half politician.
Yeah,
So this is his new approach. to the Day of
I
Atonement.
atone without
no
shame.
apologies. The takeaway of the film: don't apologize for anything. But before the scandal can even leak, you have to get Zach on the ballot. I think that process really did lend itself to a lot of the creativity and the humorous moments within the film where it's so ridiculous, but I think it's just like the quirk of the city. I think you do this anywhere outside of the Big Apple. It starts to raise flags. He's talking a little bit about the brainstorming process, about figuring out how not only to get those signatures, but also do it so that tonally with the film.
The signatures was Joe. Like Joe did all of the campaign work in terms of figuring out how to get on the ballot. Like he didn't even have a consultant. It was just him like Googling and figuring it out. And then he found Dan Bright, our campaign lawyer who's in the film, that also helped advise us on avoiding some loopholes. Like you want to get triple the amount of signatures in case people negate it. And I guess the signatures and the campaign in general just gives you a nice structure for the film where everything is headed towards the goal of election day. So we just thought, I mean, signatures and interacting with people is such a funny thing. And each actor had their own ideas of how to make it funny, whether it was Joe chasing after people who were on their morning jogs, or Sarah doing dances by Lincoln Center, or James like aggressively going after people in the park who are just there to relax, or Aaron who was trying to sell things on the side while he was getting signatures. Just each person came up with a fun way to do it, and it made for a fun sequence.
And I think something on the cinematic side and also in terms of the interaction with the people is inherently, for when you're trying to get petitions or hand things out in New York or anything like that, it's annoying. You're bothering people on some level. So having people that are trying to be funny while doing it in a way, or be entertaining in some way, is a breath of fresh air for these people who are getting peppered by all these requests. Because oh, it's another person asking for signatures, but this person at least is, singing or literally chasing us or offering us free ice cream, things like that. So at least they're being a little clownish in doing it, or asking for kidneys while also asking for signatures. So, or dealing drugs, potentially trying to deal drugs. That was occasionally, not really, but jokingly. So yeah, and jokingly, but we were, yeah. So hopefully it was, people find it entertaining, that part.
Yeah, I think you all accomplished in what you were trying to do with this film and bring like humor and levity in a time where everything is so bleak. And Zach, you were saying this earlier, but you're the face of the campaign, and much like a politician, there is that facade that you have to embody, especially when you're hiding what you're actually doing from a filmmaking perspective. Did you feel that pressure throughout when you were doing those debates? And does this project get completely scrapped if the public and your other candidates find out what you're doing? What was that contingency plan?
Um, our approach that we thought of day one was that I had to just completely embrace the identity and just be convinced. Never inside the house when we were alone and the cameras were off, we would talk about it openly. But every time I left the house, there would never be a moment where I would tell myself, "Oh, we're off the clock, cameras off. I could just go back to acting like I'm just an actor." It was just I am the candidate. And I mean, to some extent, and this happened all the way to the end, there was no way to prove that we weren't for real. And to some extent we were, because you can call us a mockumentary, but at the same time we were on the ballot. And if enough people voted for the so-called mockumentary candidate, then you have a mockumentary politician that is your overlord. So joke's on them. If they don't, they would doubt us at their peril.
Daniel, you were talking about Dan Bright, the election lawyer, and he's such a character in the film, but he's not an actor. When you were casting or hiring him for the campaign, how much information did you give him ahead of time of what you were all doing? Or did you keep it more vague so you can capture those genuine reactions?
That's such a good question. I don't know. Joe, what did you tell him?
Told he was actually the second lawyer I called. The first lawyer I called was Rudy Giuliani's election lawyer. Because I just thought, we all thought kind of that would just be the funniest. Rudy Giuliani was in the news a lot. It seemed like, oh, okay, his election lawyer would be really a whack job, And I spoke with him, but he quoted us like $30,000 or something like that. Maybe it's $50,000. He was like, I'll do it for 50,000. And I was like, oh, well, I got to get back to you. Like, probably not, like we're not going to pay you 50K. So then Dan Bright was the second guy I called. And then I just said that we were filming a documentary about local politics, and would it be okay if, when we first met with him, if we filmed it? And he said, yeah. And then he did all that. Like, he just started. I remember he was like, at one point, he like pointed at the camera, and was like, "You guys are gonna want to start filming this." And then he just started like, boom, 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 rattling off all like how it was in the movie. Like that was it. That was the experience in the movie. It was what it was like in the room. So
He took no coaching whatsoever.
none.
Wait, so that rant that he does about it's actually a genuine rant. It's not that you went back and refilmed after you revealed the secret to him.
It was genuine in the sense that we didn't give him any kind of preparation, but I don't think he behaves that way necessarily without a camera. So I think to some way he's playing to the camera, but also no, we didn't coach him or write anything at all. That was from our first meeting. So yeah.
And he's become like a partner on the project. Like he has such funny ideas, great edits.
Came to Slamdance.
Yeah, he came to Slam.
Yeah.
Huge hit at the parties.
He's also a great lawyer.
Yeah, that's true.
He's done amazing work for the working man and unions and all kinds of people like that. So it comes from a very good place.
And I think someone at Slamdance said, "Aren't you concerned like what this might do for it might do you differently as a lawyer?" And you just said, "Fuck them." The person's like, "Okay."
A question for all of you, but you all took a really big gamble that the scandal would be picked up by the media. And in the film, we see that in those early days, it wasn't getting much traction, but eventually it does. How much of what we see in the film reflects what actually happened? What was that plan if things hadn't worked in your favor?
We left some parts out where Joe maintained constant communication from a lot of angles with the media and basically trying to get ahead of the story in the sense that, oh, this is out. We want to get our narrative out there as if it was getting traction. The plan, if it didn't work, was just absolute devastation and gloom and misery.
And we just end in a very depressing.
Yeah, because the movie would be possibly ruined. And on top of that, the only people that would see the video would be people I know. So all I would have done we would have a non-mockumentary. So I wouldn't be able to tell people, oh, it was for something. They would have just seen, this bizarre campaign end in an expose of me and my proclivities to our very small communities. So,
And one scene in the movie that's very real is that once the video leaked, our expectation was it would immediately get picked up and we'd get traction, and that didn't happen. So when Zach is actually, so we're like, what do we do? We can't film this next scene. And Zach was just so devastated. Joe was so devastated. I was so devastated. We said, okay, let's film this. So we got everyone together. Zach was just laying in his bed, and he's like, this has just been a year of documenting failures at getting votes, at getting attention. Like that was all real, where we didn't get the attention and thought it was a complete failure. And then Joe kept in touch with the press, and through a couple maneuvers finally got it some attention.
I was
And
so
then
upset.
exploded.
I was so upset.
Yeah, so that scene
I
was
think the truth was there was no plan B though. There really wasn't like I mean, I guess the plan B was just to accept what the reality was, but we were like, I don't know. We were just like, we have to make it go viral, so we were fighting to our death to make it go viral.
The line that you all towed with blurring reality and fiction is going to be such a conversation starter for when this comes out on digital platform. And Zach touched on this already, but you're a filmmaker first, but you and Joe also work to come up with real solutions for this community. Have you found that those ideas have since been adopted by Gail? And also, have you thought about pitching a sequel where you run again with her slogan again?
In terms of Gail's been corrupt and dangerous for the neighborhood and the city. And I would challenge her if it came to that, if I felt the need to. She has been. I mean, it's true. She's been a scourge upon her local storefronts and shut many down. She has. There's been a lot of controversy.
Are you running again?
I'm just saying, this is just the truth. I hold grudges. I do.
I think Gail's great. I hope she doesn't hold anything against
Well, you're different. You're different. You didn't have to do battle. In terms of a sequel or any follow-up, I personally would be very interested in doing something else in this area. Maybe something with lobbying. I thought it could be a fun reality movie or reality TV show where we would run a lobbying firm using a similar kind of mixture of entertainment and actual involvement with very minimal donations. Because I do think the era of prank shows that we used to see where it's just satire and news satire, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, have faded because politics has become so ridiculous that it's no longer you making fun of serious people that are presenting ridiculous ideas. You're making fun of ridiculous politicians proposing often dangerous ideas. And I think people crave funny material that actually could be of some limited consequence. And I don't know if, obviously we're being a little facetious to say we had any kind of major impact on Eric Adams, but we were on the right track because our main idea, startup retail, of changing the way storefronts are utilized, that's happening now in a really big way, where they've reformed and rezoned all the storefronts so you can now do a lot more with them. And we're probably going to see them fill up again. So I would love to do something else. I don't know about them. They might be tired of it, but I would love to do something else with mixing movies with politics.
Overlay movies and politics.
Yeah, that's a simpler one. If we get financing for another movie, you could just run again. I think I would do pretty well, honestly.
Lincoln lost his first election, and so did your favorite politician.
And in San Francisco, we showed the movie to a pretty serious audience. I got really nervous because Slamdance was a very film oriented in the sense it was a lot of filmmakers. Yeah. And people expecting funny off the wall stuff. San Francisco, it was a very serious film festival in terms of the audience. It was a very serious audience because it was a lot of older people from San Francisco and a lot of the establishment, so to speak, wealthy people. And so I was really worried they'd be offended by it and think that we're making a mockery of politics completely, and it was rude. But afterward, people came over. I was swamped by people, including people that know and have worked with some of my opponents that I was closest to and were my allies. And they loved it because they were saying, we've tried running in San Francisco and it was really long shot bids and it was really hard. And our biggest problem was getting any kind of attention whatsoever. And it seems like you guys figured out how to get attention. Obviously, it was a very unconventional method, but other ways, the general strategy, but also to make it worth it to an extent. Because if you make a movie, then the message carries forward and you can show the movie. And so even if it's a failed bid, it could become a model where, oh, well, we got something entertaining out of it, and then the message continues. So that all being said, I think if I ran again, I think I could do pretty well. I do think
Yeah, because you have a campaign that was filmed and that film gets out there, so everyone learns about you, learns about your platforms. It's almost like a campaign strategy.
Yeah, it's one giant campaign ad that's fun to watch, where we're genuinely trying to do. It's not like any of our ideas or programs are mean or bad. We try to do nice things. So,
And people see you as like Zelensky,
Yeah.
who's in charge of Ukraine. He played a politician on a comedy TV show, and now he's in charge of, the country and almost like the leading general of the war.
yeah.
So I think, people see Zach in this context.
And we had no money for the campaign. Like, we had the absolute minimum that you legally are required to have. So everyone else spent at least 100, 150 grand. We spent, I think, $5,000 on all of our campaign expenses. And then Joe spent his blood and tears and sweat in the sense of running the whole campaign. And I spent my my face for hours because I was just on these Zooms endlessly. So I became like an emoji. But but yeah, and there are a lot more. Sorry, I don't know if I'm going on too long. There are a lot more young people in the neighborhood, and I think there are a lot more disgruntled voters, because I was being a little bit hyperbolic about Gail, but I've talked to a lot of people that last time just reflexively voted for her and now do feel like things have gone downhill. So all that being said, I think we would win a sweeping victory, and then the movie would continue into City Hall and it would become a franchise of sorts.
That would be fun.
I've got two ideas for you guys. I think you could go back and find that guy at Central Park who's questioning you about what your platform was, and tell them you've been planning it all along and the film is the platform. And now I feel like when we go to the premiere on the 22nd, Zach is going to announce he's rerunning again.
Oh, wait, that should be how you start the Q&A.
That's a very interesting
So
idea.
now that I've gathered everyone here,
Please donate to my campaign because I'm interested in relaunching if I get enough.
it's kind of brilliant.
You should actually really do that.
I think that's a very good idea.
It's happening.
And I hope the 750 people that voted for you come back and watch this as well.
1,000.
Yeah, I think we had closer to 1,000.
No, wasn't it 750?
That was
many
where we
reports out
stopped
there.
that night. What?
Oh.
There's reports out there of different, they at a certain point they stopped counting. We probably have a lot more votes than even that,
Yeah, I think if they counted every vote, like Zach could have been in second place. That's the rumor on the street.
That makes me feel better because I thought Joe's math was just really bad, that he was rounding up 750 to 1,000. I was like, that is a stretch.
I think initially on one of them it says like 986 or something like that. But
We
like to call
thought
that.
about at the end of the movie doing a whole sequence of Zach not believing the count and doing a whole count the votes, but things got a little too real there. So we had to back off.
That would have been in
going
poor
down that
taste.
road, yeah.
Yeah. Going back to what we were saying earlier too, but the film does really serve as a great reminder that filmmaking is meant to be fun and it's meant to bring joy, especially in a time where everything feels so bleak. And I think this project is going to definitely put a smile on everybody's face. For each of you, what was your favorite behind the scenes moment that didn't fit with the story that you remember from filming for 101 days?
My favorite was, it was me, Joe, and Sarah Coffey, and we, during the time where when we were actually not getting any traction on the video and it felt like the movie was just a failure, we went down to Riverside Park at magic hour, and I was just bemoaning the state of affairs, and Sarah in the meantime was doing really well on TikTok. She was actually having a really good week, so she kind of didn't care as much initially from a movie perspective, and Joe is just sort of just fanatically insisting everything was going to be fine. And I felt like it became a touching moment where Sarah tried to she had refused up until that point to put any of this on her TikTok, but she did film a TikTok that failed. And so that failed too. But it became, I think, the warmest moment for me. It was the most fun in the sense that it completely broke through where I lost track. It was just people, some of my best friends were there, and it felt like, okay, worst case scenario, this movie is a bust, but this is nice. We got fun. It was really fun making this because you don't get that on bigger budget movies as much. It's and you don't get that in general in life. So I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and that energy of the project where it literally was the same way the campaign was just like $5,000, relatively low budget, run it with your friends. That was the movie was pick up a camera, just make it with your friends without we had a cinematographer, Alex, and sound mixer Mark, who came on some days.
Mark David Chapman.
Mark Chapman, yeah. But other than that, it was pretty much just us. And one storyline, there's so many things that aren't on camera, like Zach and Joe doing a ton of Zooms and campaign work. They had this idea where they were going to put a Bitcoin mining machine in the projects because you don't have to pay for electricity. So that would generate income for residences, but it was just too confusing and maybe illegal. But we had one plot line where Aaron Dallavilla was meant to infiltrate Gail Brewer's campaign. And I followed him for days. We'd go to all the rallies. He would hand out flyers for Gail. He was campaigning for her. And he was talking to her campaign manager. And we thought it would be this funny plot line. And it did turn out great, but it just pulled away from the story too much. So me and Aaron spent hours campaigning for Gail that was in the movie. So that might have been the difference.
You're right. That's why she won. You pushed her over the edge.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
Oh, my favorite days were always those days like Daniel's talking about where literally everybody was together. You get like, and we'd all kind of pack into Zach's mom's apartment and just like, it was just, those were the best days. Like we'd eat all day, we'd eat pizza and salad and whatever. Like, I don't know if I can think of a specific moment. I do particularly love that shoot that Zach was referring to. It was really pretty. It was like magic hour. And it was just funny because Zach was so in such despair and Sarah was like, trying to pretend to not be in such despair. It was just, I don't know. That was,
so happy.
Maybe in terms of filming, like things that didn't end up fitting, maybe that probably I would agree. But overall, it was just like Daniel's saying, like it was just so fun, like when we all got together, because it was just making something with your friends. So that was
I
awesome.
didn't enjoy that as much when we were all together, all of us, because that meant on those days we were campaigning typically, and those were kind of stressful for me because I had to pretend to be a different human. I would be moving differently. I had different mannerisms. So those are always scary days for me, but it seemed like it was fun for everyone. I would love to run again if we had a significant campaign treasury, because then I think we can make it go so much further. I'd want to have floats going down up in Broadway.
And this time, the city gives you, I think, 8 times matching funds. So if you raise 10K, it turns into 80. But we didn't accept matching funds just because, there's some mixed incentives here in terms of campaign and movie. But if I guess we'd still be making a movie, so we probably can't take matching funds.
Well, who knows?
One big thing that I would love to do, sorry, this is crazy, but you can manufacture pharmaceuticals in your home now.
What does that have to do?
I think that's something to invest in as a city. It would cut prices way down.
People making Tylenol in their living rooms?
Yeah, well, not Tylenol, but prescription drugs. Now,
that sounds like an
opioid. What was a funny day? No. It was a really funny shoot day that didn't end up. Was how lit like the after party of the panel. The panel discussion with the JF.
Oh yeah.
The after party was like lit. Like everybody on the panel stayed and partied and did things that maybe we shouldn't put on the record. There were, it was a fun party.
We have footage. Members of the panel were just in the bathroom together, hotboxing it with weed.
That's what I was referring to, by the way. That's exactly.
We couldn't include it because no one would believe this was real.
Oh, that would have been good.